there, boils and ghouls. Welcome to this week's episode of Hollow Weekly. Nick and George here with Lifeforce.
Do you like space horror? Do you like vampires? Do you like aliens? Do you like drugs? Do you like zombies?
Do you like really good special effects in a weird movie?
Then you will love Lifeforce. Actually, so we're going to do top line review of this, and then we saw it in a really interesting circumstance, so we'll get to that. But I just got to say, going into it, that I had seen this movie really, really young. Probably too young, right?
It blows my mind that you've even seen it.
Right. Well, I mean, it was a flop in his career, unfortunately, but I fell in love with this movie. Now, the one caveat here is that there is some ridiculousness sitting at the center of this film that I think is not just bad, but actually might be worse than it was when it was made, right?
Yeah.
Like especially there are some really weird metaphors going on about sex, about relationships. Like there's some weird stuff at the heart of this that I still haven't figured out what those things are.
When you're saying it, and I'm like, there's no way anyone listening to this and myself would pick up on any of it on the first run. Like it's like that's like third or fourth watch where you're like, I see what he was going for there.
Yeah, I mean, if he was even going for anything except for more cocaine, it's right. Then it's
right.
Possible. But like there's this incredibly weird moments, and we'll get to it, but there's like an incredibly weird moment that transpires with Patrick Stewart. But there's an even stranger moment that happens when the space vampire jumps into another body and she's in like a taxi and they're going down the street and he's having a dream about being in the taxi with her. And I mean,
he's like visualizing it.
There's really strange stuff at some of the heart of this that makes me nervous. But I actually fell in love with this movie because the things that were, first of all, it's completely unique, and I know that that's like the backhanded compliment way of like whatever, but it truly is because, you know, when you say a movie like Birdemic is unique, right? There's no other movies like Birdemic, but that's not really true. There are tons of movies like Birdemic.
What also is not true is no one's ever said Birdemic's unique.
Right. But this one has something really interesting going for it in terms of the fact that, believe it or not, the people who brought you this movie are the people who made Texas Chainsaw Massacre, Alien, and did the effects for Star Wars, right? So this is crazy. An epic scale movie that feels half Space Lawrence of Arabia and half Plan 9 from Outer Space.
Yeah.
Right? And that's what I mean by that it's completely unique. I've never seen it like that. But the craziness is so charming. The performances are so interesting and then not. And then the craziness is so real. Like I just fell in love. I've absolutely fell in love with this movie. What did you think of it? It's your first time seeing it.
All right. So for people who don't know, this is a movie called Lifeforce, directed by Tobe Hooper, who had a wicked budget for whatever reason.
Yes.
Well, they said he came off Poltergeist, so it was like he was gambling.
He was a hot commodity, and Canon Films decided to attempt to make a bigger budget movie instead of just making exploitation or B movies like they were known for up until that time. They were flush with success. He was flush with success. Everyone was successful. They were like, let's blow it out and make a huge movie.
Let's do it. I thought like my blurby review that you would see on like Rotten Tomatoes would be like, this is the movie you would have a dream about if you were on board the ship in Mystery Science Theater 3000.
I could see it, right.
Because you see all
Event Horizon went by.
Yeah, like because you see all these like it's like the accumulation of all these weird ass fucking movies just kind of roll up into one and then they smoked it. Like that's sort of how it felt.
Plot wise, not look wise. Plot wise, for sure.
Look wise, the special effects were actually really, really good.
That's what I'm saying.
There's a few cheesy ones, like when they're like in this, they're in their suits and they're floating through the things. But like the first beginning stuff, like all the space stuff, looked really freaking good.
Yep.
I was totally buying it, and it gave me like that like old school B movie kind of like cheesy effect at a cool little theater. There was a part in the middle when you were mentioning where Patrick Stewart, where they were looking at the girl, the redhead girl, and visioning, I felt like that was just like, hey, we got to hit a runtime or some shit like that. Like that definitely could have been.
So I don't agree with that at all.
Next.
I think that was a big part of the message, or not the message. I'm saying it wrong. That was a big part of what they thought made their own movie interesting to them, and that I was picking up on. But I get your point. Like that, it looks. I mean, it looks kind of Mystery Science Theater, first of all, right? That part is like whatever. But the thing I think they were trying to do there is, I think that they thought they had like a Usual Suspects level, like twist, and their twist was that the space vampire can jump from body to body,
Right?
And she's jumping from body to body, and then she was in Patrick Stewart's body, and then they double twisted it, and they knew that she was in the body. Remember, they trapped Patrick Stewart. He came in, and all of a sudden they ambushed him.
They had all those drugs,
right?
And
I think that was in their head. That was like a big twist, but it didn't play like a twist.
No, it did. That was the part,
weird.
That was the only part of the film where like I got kind of bored and was like sort of like daydreaming, like sort of drifting off. But then like the third act was like was pretty bonkers.
The third act is incredible.
Third act. So like
the third act is incredible.
The guy from the Secret Cinema said, like he said something along the lines of like, you see all the budget in this film, and you see it in the beginning, certainly with all the space stuff. The middle, it goes more to your drama. Like it kind of felt like kind of Christopher Nolan-y, like the way they were trying to do their story and stuff.
Definitely.
So I think it's kind of quiet. And then at the end, it just goes like, it's like Apocalypse Now in the city with zombies.
It had some Night of the Comet feel to it.
Yeah.
I mean, because it was, well, so let's back up a second. So one of the things that I think is one of the things I look for in movies like this, like Tobe Hooper is a really good legendary filmmaker. So I was like, what is he putting in here? Because Texas Chainsaw 2 is a really subversive movie that kind of grew with time. So I'm like, what's hiding in here that maybe like people weren't getting or whatever.
Right.
One of the things this is a minor thing, but one of the things I thought was cool and interesting was if you look at how vampires work, like theoretically in life, let's say they were real, like it was Walking Dead, right? But vampires, like the planet should be overrun by vampires mathematically in weeks.
Yeah.
Right? Like, but it never happens in any vampire movie ever. It's always like one Dracula or the Lost Boys, and then somehow they keep going on for centuries and centuries without creating very many more vampires. Or you have like the underworld situation where they're hunted into small. But mathematically, if one vampire creates another vampire and that vampire creates more vampires, like the Earth should be all vampires by like, December 31st. So this movie did that. Like this movie, the vampires were overrunning the planet. Everything was going to hell, and everyone was getting sucked up into that amazing blue Lifeforce, like kind of feeding thing. So I was like, first of all, good on you, movie, for like actually doing the vampire math.
Yeah,
right? I thought that was cool. And then I like when movies give you, like I love that when the implications of things are horrifying, right? Like that movie, The Endless, that I love so much, where the guy's stuck in a 6-second time loop for eternity. So he's just living the same 6 seconds over and over again, which is like the worst thing I can possibly imagine.
Right.
Like it's worse than being in hell with flames or whatever, because at least like maybe Harvey Keitel will show up or something. But like this one, you're just in the 6-second loop for eternity, no escape. The implications of that terrible, right? But in this one, there's this epic climactic Stay Puft Marshmallow Event Horizon scene happening at the end where they're confronting not just the space vampire Matilda May, but the two male space vampires who didn't go to vampire training school very long because they were terrible at it compared to her, right? She was amazing at it. And then there's this blue light, and this character stands back and he goes, those little sparkles in the light, those are all human souls going up. They're all getting sucked up and like whatever. And then there's this moment where the main guy, I'll look up his name in a second, the one who fell in love with Matilda May, like that, was with her for most of the movie. He was making out with her, and then she was trying to seduce him and trying to suck his soul away, take his life force away, literally. And he was into it because like he's being seduced and hypnotized, and it's Matilda May. So like, and then all of a sudden you're looking at it and they're standing in this blue column. And while he's deciding whether he should strike with the sword and like end it or whatever, like 100 white specks go past him.
Mm-hmm.
Like while you're making a decision, it's like being the captain of the Titanic, right? All right, so you hit the iceberg. Now what? Well, I mean, I think we're okay. We're probably okay, right? And then while you're fucking around, like everyone's gonna die because you're wasting time. So this guy was considering it. While he was considering, the vampires were literally slaughtering hundreds of people.
Take your time.
Right, going by. So just the implication at the heart of it, I thought was really cool. Like actually scarier than I expected for this movie, right? So I thought all that part was amazing.
Yeah,
Talk to us before you do that. Talk to us about how we saw it, because I know you loved how we saw this movie.
that was actually my favorite part of the evening.
Yeah,
more so than the movie. Not that I thought the movie was terrible. It was really enjoyable. Probably only enjoyable in that setting. So it was our first time going to the Vista Theater.
Yes,
and
in Los Angeles.
In Los Angeles, which I'd never been, and I really dig these like smaller, independent kind of theaters. Like they're really really fun to go to.
And we went with our good friend Garen Sparks, who is occasionally on the podcast and is an incredible resource for movies and whatnot. And he kind of tipped us to this and took us, which is amazing. And we want to do a part 2 of this episode with him because he's got a lot of background detail on Lifeforce that we're not going to cover. But yeah, so it was the three of us. We go. It's an amazing theater.
Vista Theater, midnight screening, and that theater was really bitching. I really liked it, and it's pretty close. That was also my favorite part. I was like, when we first
went, we're from LA. It's got to be close.
Yeah, so like I was like, oh, it's good. I thought it was at the Egyptian Theater, and I was like, I like the Egyptian Theater, but it's a little far away, and then you got to call an Uber when you're done, and yada yada yada. And then I looked at the Google Maps. I was like, oh, it's 10 minutes away. This is great.
Easy.
I really, really liked that theater in particular. There's something about like, because we have like the AMC Stubbs Pass, and like we go to the theater and the Americana every now and then, and like those are cool. But there's something about like the one screen old school theater that just like really sets the tone.
With the full red curtains and like the Egyptian architecture and the heads on the columns.
The crazy designs everywhere.
Selling like really cool movie posters out front.
Well, that's the thing is like, we've mentioned on the show a couple times, like I think how you view a movie or a TV show is almost as important as the TV show or the movie itself. Like if you see it in a really cool setting, it's going to make up for some of the flaws, which just made up for a lot of flaws.
Right.
A lot of flaws. Not a lot of flaws. I don't want to.
No, there's a lot of flaws in the movie. The thing is, the thing that I found most refreshing about it was like there were a lot of flaws in it, but there was so much good and so much charm that I walked away not worrying about the flaws like I would with a lot of other movies, right? So
right.
And part of it is how you see it, right?
How you see it. And the one thing I really like, so this was done by the guys who run Secret Cinema.
Yes.
I keep wanting to call it like something else, but
Secret Movie Club?
Secret Movie Club or some shit like that, but it's Secret Cinema. And they said they have an email list that you can sign up for. So I don't know if you guys Google that, if you can find it, but like I'm definitely going to sign up and try. They're also doing Jason X. So if you're listening to this now, I think it's on Friday the 13th. So if you're in LA, I'll probably be there for this. But there's something really cool about these midnight screenings, or like the horror movie marathons and midnight screenings. Like there's a community behind it that I'm really, really sort of new to, because we've only been to 2 marathons, both of them at the Egyptian Theater. So this is our first time at a different theater, and it's like really charming and it's enchanting, and there's like we didn't.
The crowd energy was great.
The crowd, dude. So like that theater, how many seats do you think that had? Like 300?
Sounds right.
There was probably 45.
Mm-hmm.
There could have been more than 60 people in there, but it felt like the theater was almost halfway packed with how much energy was in that room for Lifeforce. And my favorite part about these like screenings isn't even the movie itself, it's the people who get up to talk. So it's 2 guys who run it. One guy did it as a trivia question and confused the shit out of everyone.
That was hilarious.
Because we were like, what are you asking?
I love when someone asks a trivia question and they ask it so the way he asked it was so jacked up that he was looking, his answer was a movie title and people were shouting out actors' names. That's how bad he garbled bad. The ask of the question. It was like, name the first movie where they said, "Frankly, my dear, I don't give a damn," and you're like, John Wayne. What's happening?
But then the other guy got up and he talked about canon films, which I honestly knew nothing about, and it's sort of like when we like to travel, like we like to do ghost tours places, because one, you get to hear cool stories about ghosts and like scary shit,
Right.
but two, you also get a little bit of history about the town itself. And I feel like these types of screenings are the best way to, one, get a little bit about the movies, a little bit about the culture, and you get out and you get to experience these cool theaters with a really awesome crowd who's super into it.
Totally.
So the theater was amazing, and also because Garen foolishly voted for or made a bet against me that Michigan was going to be Ohio State, I got to walk out of there with one of Secret Cinema's custom posters. I actually need to grab it. I have it behind my computer, but I need to get a frame for it.
Yes.
They're going to put like right behind me back there, so we can
It'll
show
be a good background for our Facebook Lives, which you will see if you're in our Facebook group, Allo Weekly Horror Club.
Yeah, if you're listening to this and you watch the live, we're going to butt these up right next to each other.
Yes.
But the theater itself.
So how you saw it, we love.
How I saw it, we loved it.
We love. We're going to do Secret Cinema again for sure, right?
And I think it was 35 millimeter.
And they were really passionate. They seemed to be as passionate about canon as they were about this movie itself, this particular movie, and Tobe Hooper's work. They seemed to like be equally passionate about both subjects, which was fun because you're getting like double the because they get evangelical in there. They're like, the guy's like, this is the craziest movie you're ever gonna see, and this is
right.
Like, which is, it's not the crazy. It's the weird thing is that it didn't. I mean, because I'm a huge David Lynch fan, it didn't come off like any 10 minutes of Twin Peaks: The Return is weirder than Lifeforce. Like, there's no doubt about it to me.
Hands down, yeah.
But because it's basically got a narrative flow, and once you realize the characters are jumping bodies, then that explains most of the strangeness that's happening. Except for the inadvertent strangeness where, like, you know, there's the weird plot jumps and, like, whatever, which, you know, we can get to in a little bit. But my favorite thing was that I felt like the passion of the people introing it and the passion of the audience in the theater was matched by the passion of the people making the movie in weird ways. So like the Tobe Hooper, obviously, like, you know, it seemed to me like he knew that there was a lot on the line with the movie, but it didn't hold him back from being creative, right?
Yeah.
Like, it didn't feel like it didn't feel like a play it safe movie at all.
No.
Right? So he really went for it, which takes guts, and it backfired on him spectacularly, but like, I'm glad that he had the, you know, the balls to at least give it a shot. But Peter Firth, who played the really serious guy who charges in and saves the day and throws the sword to the other guy at the end, Steve Railsback, Colonel Carlson, who is the guy who gets double penetrated with Matilda May at the end there with the sword. Peter Firth, that guy was acting. I mean, that's what it is. that guy, he showed up like Donald Pleasance times 10.
Yeah.
Like, he showed up with the most serious demeanor, the most like, I'm a badass. All 5-6 of me is here, and I'm gonna kick ass. And
the
like,
whole movie.
Yeah,
the whole movie.
He was so intense. So he was like really bringing the passion. Carlson was bringing this weird, like, he looked like he really fell in love with Matilda May. So like, he was totally believable. Matilda May was actually sinister, which I didn't expect. I expected like, oh yeah, the nudity and all that was like, it was all legendary for the people who grew up with this movie or whatever. But you don't hear about you hear about that she's naked for most of the movie.
Right.
You don't hear about that she's actually frightening for a lot of the movie. Like, that flat affect that she speaks in, and the weird way that, did you notice they were like mixing her voice and Patrick Stewart's voice sometimes in the mix?
Yeah, like, sometimes like she got like a little bassy.
Yeah, and it
kind of
got
sounded
really,
like Audrey too.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, and it was just off and sinister. And then, you know, there was this incredibly badass moment for her where she blows up like this building, and there's like, it's the Die Hard glass scene times 1,000, like this entire field of broken glass, and she just barefoot walks right over it without blinking an eye, and you're like, I don't want to meet you in a dark alley. Like, so it was really, the performances, the passion behind what the people were putting into it, and then we got to talk about the music, because holy shit, the music is really good.
I thought the music was...
That's a Jerry Goldsmith score. I mean, it's perfect for what this is.
He did The Omen, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Once you get that guy on board, your music's got to
But the music was perfect for this, because the funny thing was that it was passionate. It was the horror sci-fi version of the music they play in the spaghetti Clint Eastwood westerns. right?
Right.
The music knew what this movie was.
And it wasn't, and there was a lot of like science and like sci-fi stuff in it, and he didn't go like cheeseball sciencey with
right.
it.
We didn't get a Forbidden Planet. Like,
Yeah, he didn't get like the third.
theremin,
Yeah. Like, he didn't get any of that. Like, he played it pretty straightforward.
Yeah, totally.
It was a good soundtrack. I would. It's one of those where like I was trying to actually find a Spotify playlist of horror movie soundtracks. That's not your normal stuff, like Nightmare on Elm Street, Halloween, all that. Like more random stuff. I think I might have to create one myself. But some of those tracks from that movie would make it onto that list because they're unique enough and they got like a really cool theme and emotion behind them to where like if you're just walking around the house doing chores, you listen to that, you're like, all right, I can vibe with this for a little while.
Yeah, it's got energy to it. Ironically, being Lifeforce, right? That totally makes sense.
That's very. There was one scene in there that really stood out to me. And then we got to talk about some of the zombie-esque special effects because I think there was some connection to Day of the Dead or Return of the Living Dead with this.
Well, yeah, Dan O'Bannon wrote it. He wrote Return of the Living.
That's what it was. We were talking about that on the car ride over there, which is why some of the zombies like when those first. Let me just to jump into that. The vampire zombie lifeless people like in the beginning when she sucks his life.
Got really I Am Legend in the last third of it, but in a better like this movie's better than I Am Legend, no doubt about it.
Right.
Which is kind of like was my best hope for this movie. Was that because
when you say
I
it
Am
like that, it
Legend's
makes me appreciate it even more.
Right. I Am Legend is such a great idea, such a similar idea, right?
Right.
In a lot of ways. And such a great idea and one of the greatest horror novels ever written. And then you got the Will Smith movie comes out and it has like the effects in I Am Legend are worse than the effects in this, right?
Yeah.
The characters are worse because you care about these characters more. And that one's less scary. It's a little more haunting with the loneliness part of it.
Right.
But the other thing, like the thing you're about to talk about, the apocalyptic wasteland that everything was turning into at the end was really well shot. Like the part where the big blue, death ray was going up into the sky, and then all around it was like these steps that looked like the entrance to like the Silent Hill church, and there were bodies just
scattered
all
everywhere.
over it, and a path straight through them to like whatever. Like, and then when the camera lifted up, all of that, those were all real effects. Those are all real stunt people. Those are all that. None of that is CGI, and like it looked incredible.
I really liked. I don't know. Would you call it a zombie when she sucked the life out of the guy in the research facility?
No, they're vampires, but they're this version of vampires. But we can just call them zombies because that's what functionally they are.
And they definitely look like zombies.
Right.
That I don't know if you call it puppeteering or the animatronic, whatever whatever they did. It looked so amazing,
and they had so much personality to them. Like, and there was remember she the first guy who visits Matilda May in when she's been quote unquote rescued. She victimizes him first, and when they come in, he's like sucked completely dry. He looks like a 100,000-year-old shoe, and then she immediately goes to the next guy because they're coming in one at a time for some stupid reason, right? And then
after running through and to save him, you have to run through 700 actual doors.
Oh my god, that was ridiculous.
That scene was hilarious.
That was ridiculous. But then that guy comes up later. They're doing an autopsy on him, and they think he's dead, like Seven style. Like the guy who was in the bed, and he starts moving, and his eyes open, and it's creepy.
And the way he moves, it's unhuman.
Right, and the look in his eyes, just like desperate hunger, was perfect for what that was. But then he vampires one of the people in the lab, and then he goes back to the way he looked when we met him, and the other guy gets desiccated, right? And what I really liked was one of the most haunting things from a very, very underrated horror movie for horror fans, not underrated in general because it's Spielberg, but War of the Worlds is a great horror movie that a lot of horror fans miss because they think it's sci-fi or like whatever, but it's a horror movie. And one of the chilling things about it is when the aliens first emerge in War of the Worlds, I don't know if you remember, but the death ray basically turns them all to dust or powder when it hits them. And there's this amazing scene where Tom Cruise is running, like he always does in every movie. He's running and he's outrunning everyone else like he always does. And then some of the innocent bystanders around him are getting vaporized. And there's this woman who gets hit in the back, and she doesn't know because she's not seeing but then she realizes because she's in pain, and then she gets this look of total anguish on her face and then bursts into powder. Like, it looks like LeBron doing his clap thing.
Right.
Like, but because of, it always haunted me because of the anguish on her face. It looked so real. And to think that your whole life and like whatever, you're just wiped out, like turned into Right, like is horrible, and that happens in this movie
Turned into
a
talcum
lot.
powder.
And the most amazing one is when the guy who doesn't know he's powder, because they have to feed like every 2 hours or they dry out completely, right?
Yeah.
So they
I
have
did-
to
I
feed
loved that
Lifeforce,
touch.
which is
I
great.
really like that.
And then he's in the jail and he runs towards the prison bars, and when he hits them, he just goes poof.
And like,
Whatever.
like an arm flies through like a piece, like a shoe and like a hat.
It was amazing.
It had
was so
had
cool.
some of the best effects of like a really cheesy film
Yep.
that we've seen at one of these like screenings I've ever seen. It also had what I thought was a really great and haunting scene. I called it the Jekyll and Hyde scene. So it's when our main guy goes back for the sword, and
Yeah.
the scientist guy's there, and they shoot him like he's kind of like in the shadows, and like he's
That's one of my very favorite scenes.
oh, and he's kind of sweaty.
You know something's wrong
Yeah,
with
and
him.
he's kind of keeping to himself, and they talk for a little bit, and then his back's turned to him, and like his voice kind of like gets real low, and he turns around, and he just looks demonic. Like he doesn't look like anyone else in the film. He doesn't look like a vampire. He doesn't look like a mummy. He looks kind of demonic.
Yep.
And you just turn around and you see that reveal, and you're like, oh, holy shit, he's one of those. The tension in that scene alone, and I'm one of those guys. Like I'll tell you, I love Texas Chainsaw Massacre. I'm not a big fan of the second one.
Right.
I actually have not. This is embarrassing to say we're on a horror podcast. I haven't sat down and watched Poltergeist in its entirety. So
Right.
I've not been one of those guys where like I know Tobe Hooper has directed great movies, but I never thought of him as like oh yeah, like I never thought of like
Well,
what
'cause
is.
he does some bad weird shit too.
Well, I've never I didn't really know like what if you ask me what's Tobe Hooper's style,
Right.
I don't really know.
Right.
But what I do know is that he did that scene that stuck out so hard
Yep.
from everything else
That
I've ever
scene
seen.
felt like a scene that could have been a Land of the Dead.
Yes.
Right. And it was so well done. Right. And do you remember what the guy said? Because it was one of my favorite lines in the whole.
No, what did he
movie.
say?
So the guy, he's possessed, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then he's stalking. He's coming after the main Carlson, and Carlson shoots him in the gut, or shoots him in that one spot. Because remember, you have to these vampires. It was a weird random detail, but you have to stab them like 2 inches below their heart or something ridiculous.
Yeah,
which
yeah,
was one
yeah.
of the stupid lore things they just threw in there.
I remember that,
But
yeah.
so he gets hit right in the spot, and his face bubbles a little bit. And then he starts to get older and drier looking, and like whatever. And he literally looks at Carlson and he goes, "Well, there I go." And it was like funny, but also scary. Like,
Yeah, like-
that, to realize that he's like inhabiting a body that's like coming apart, and he's feeling it. And it was the same feeling you get watching like Brundlefly, like Jeff Goldblum
Yeah.
go through. Like he's disintegrating, but he knows it. He's going to be conscious of it, and then he gets sucked up into that evil blue ray thing. All of that was fucking amazing. That was a great scene.
I really liked it. What do you think about the technology aspect of it? Because one of the things that you and Garen brought up that I thought was really interesting was like they never say what year this film takes place.
Yeah, I mean the tech is fine. Like it's the way it's always going to be when you have something that's older. Some is going to age well, some's not going to age well. I love that they posited that the alien ship hides in comet tails. So it's spying on planets by going by in the tail of the comet and not being detected, which I thought was just a cool way to present. These comets have always traditionally been like harbingers of doom for humanity. So that's like sitting there in our DNA that comets are bad news, right?
Right.
And the fact that they hid the space vampires in there, I thought was really. I thought
The fact that we just had
I
to
thought that
use
was
the
really
term
cool.
for real space vampires.
Right. Yeah. Right. Right. But like,
awesome.
but if you remember, like the first shuttle gets, wiped out, and then the shuttle's just drifting, like in space orbit, and they have to in Earth's orbit, and they have to send another shuttle up to find out they actually connect to they dock to each other, right? And then the shuttle comes back, and it just comes back, it's just drifting with no, like showing no signs of life, and they're trying to figure out. And I realized, oh, holy shit, we're watching the ship from Dracula. That's the ship from Dracula. When Dracula comes to shore, and it's just
Wow, yeah.
it's just coffins and no people, no signs of life, and just this ghostly ship. And then they have this ghostly space shuttle with 3 glass coffins and no life forms. I'm like, wow, they just did Dracula on us. And that was
Right.
like, I mean, I wasn't so much the tech part of it as what they were using the tech. They were using the tech versions of vampire lore, but in tech. And I thought that was really, really cool. And my favorite scene of all of them, because it was so bizarre and amazing, and it's when I fell in love hard for the movie, was it's a quiet scene when they're like helicoptering back, I think, and making they're trying to make their next moves against the vampires, and it's after Patrick Stewart is gotten, and if you remember, blood starts to leak upwards out of their faces in these really weird shots, and it starts to coagulate and form like this blood globe in the air, and then it forms the female space vampire in form, and then it holds together for a second and disintegrates, and that's when she escapes, right? So that's when she's in the other woman's body or whatever. But she literally blurts out, she goes Carlson, like really sinister. The voice comes out of like the blood girl, and then she dissolves, and it's just like Tobe Hooper style. It's just like it all hits the ground like this gross, wet slapping sound, like all this blood hitting, like whatever. It was really gory and really weird, but like Matilda May's face in there was great acting. Like she looked tormented and angry and evil as hell, but like not wanting to be doing the thing. Like it was that Frankenstein moment where you had empathy for the creature, but it was a floating blood globe. Like,
right.
It was so bizarre and cool that I love that. To me is Tobe Hooper. Like
gotcha.
Other people can make. Other, directors can make sci-fi horror and they'll make it look their ways or whatever, but none of them are going to have blood flowing into the air from two weird special effects versions of faces that were clearly not really the people, right? That was a bad effect on the ground. But then when the blood went up there and formed into this girl, it was like, I don't know, it was so surreal and amazing.
That's why I'm curious. Like, what do other people like who've watched a lot more of Tobe Hooper stuff? Like, what is his thing, or does he have it? Right? Yeah. I'm genuinely curious because like I haven't watched enough of it.
I mean, the only way I think of it, I think his style is just. I think of his style as just taking chances.
Gotcha.
I think he just takes. I think he takes chances with scenes and with dialogue and with like what he just takes chances and does things that, his style is sort of like the anti-everyone else's style. He doesn't seem to have like a coherent style of his own so much, more that he just will do things that in ways that no one else will do them, right? So, but he's way more of a mainstream director than like Richard Stanley, who we talked about on the last episode. Mm-hmm. He has some Tobe Hooper in him, where he's just going to do this weirdness and do like color out of space and do like, it's going to look weird or whatever. But Tobe Hooper also has a pretty mainstream way to tell a story, make it entertaining,
gotcha.
Richard Stanley couldn't helm Star Wars, right?
Yeah.
And David Lynch couldn't do Star Wars. Like, here, watch this, mind blown, right? Richard Stanley, who I love, and Tobe Hooper and David Lynch, of the three of them, Tobe Hooper made the best horror Star Wars. Like, David Lynch got offered Star Wars and turned it down, but if he had made it, it wouldn't have been as good as Lifeforce. Because David Lynch can't work in someone else's mythology,
right?
Right? He doesn't have that capability. And then Richard Stanley, I don't even think he'd get the movie made. Right?
Yeah.
Tobe Hooper can ingest like just inordinate amounts of cocaine and still make a relatively mainstream movie, like whatever. Now I know this movie failed or whatever, but like he's had a super successful career, right? So like, I mean, he won basically. So. I just feel like his style is more like
take chances,
risk taking.
That makes sense because when I try to think of the stuff I have seen of his, like it's all really kind of different from each other. So
totally,
that's pretty like fucking awesome.
Like I wouldn't have had Leatherface dance the way he dances in Texas 2. I mean, half of Texas 2 looks like a musical to me. It looks like Leatherface is just doing like a little jig the whole time.
He's trying to get down, trying to make it funky.
But I mean, that's taking a chance, and like they pay off when they pay off.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad we got to see this movie, and got to see it in the way we saw it.
Yes.
Because I really think that amplified it. I will say this, like what's also interesting is after going to a couple marathons and like a midnight screening. I guess we went to 2 midnight screenings. We went to the Arrow Theater for Jason Lives.
Yep.
Which that was a packed house for that one.
That was a packed house.
And that's honestly the kind of high I've been chasing ever since, is a packed house midnight screening of a cult hit. Yep. Because that energy is like, it's just so fucking wild, dude.
Like it.
And like what's even like my favorite part is like, especially when it's like an older film and they'll do like some kind of like off-color joke or humor that doesn't really fly today, when they do it, the audience reaction of like groaning and laughing at how absurd they did the thing. Like there was a scene in Lifeforce where I think someone slaps the shit out of that girl, and back then, like it still feels like kind of weird, but everyone's reaction to that laughing of like how absurd it was.
Totally.
It just like shit like that is like.
There's an amazing moment that's played completely like deadpan. It's played completely like Oscar Whiplash level acting, even though it's completely ludicrous.
Yeah.
But there's this amazing moment in this movie where they're interviewing one of the people after his attack, and they were like, "So you just let her like do it? You just let it like whatever?" And they were like, "What was going on? Like, was it sexual?" And he was like, "Oh yes, overwhelmingly so." And the audience just lost it because he was acting like super serious, but he was giving us information we already had.
Yeah, like she's been walking around butt ass naked for 20 minutes.
Right.
We get it.
Right, and then second of all, he was saying it in a way of like. He was trying to make it sound like it was as horrifying as everything else that was happening. And that's what I mean about like things change in terms of like, so like the canon cult of the movies, I feel like the weird part is a lot of those are not going to make it past this current environment we're in.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
There's a lot of those where you go back and you watch them and there's just unforgivable things that happen in there. And I think that's one of the interesting things. Maybe that's a good place for me to leave it, is just the full circle part of, even though Tobe Hooper's thing is taking chances, and even though I think there is some weird problematic shit sitting in the heart of this movie, I also think that, and it was gratifying to hear that Matilda May, I watched an interview with her where she was saying how incredibly classy Tobe Hooper was to her and how supportive and, like whatever. So, but I think for all his risk taking, we are in safe hands, because I think his main concern is entertainment. It's more dangerous when you're dealing with directors who have agendas that are political or sociological or like whatever, because when it's right, when it fits what you believe in, well, that's great. But when it's not, you're in trouble. And so I think Tobe Hooper's main goal was just to entertain the shit out of people, right? So I think in retrospect, the Lifeforce may actually grow in strength, which is appropriate since it's a vampire.
Yeah, and when you put it like that, then I enjoyed it. Like he accomplished his mission. Like I did not walk out of that theater unsatisfied with the way we spent our time.
Exactly.
That was perfect. So
let us know what you think of Lifeforce, whether you've seen
even
it
heard
or
of
whether
it.
you're checking it out after you've listened to this. But we're really interested to know, because this movie sits in a weird spot where it should be a cult favorite, but it isn't, because it's too big, too much budget. So I think a lot of people don't think of it as B movie.
Right.
So it didn't get to slide into like Pet Sematary 2, Prom Night 2 kind of like status, because it was just too epic, right? And I think it brings back a lot of bad memories for horror fans who really like Tobe Hooper and know that this movie sort of like really impacted his career for the worse, right?
Right.
So I think because of those reasons that this movie doesn't get as much love as I would like to see it get, because I think it's amazing. But let us know what you think.
Let us know what you think. And I actually, if you're in the area and you go to these screenings, let us know if there's any ones that we should check out, because I really only hear about it from Garen.
Yeah, for sure.
So if there's any cool screenings or anything like that, that'd be cool to have like a Hollow Weekly meetup.
Yeah, we
like
might see you there.
Yeah,
we could prearrange it.
Like I know we went to the Universal Monsters one, and you were like, "Hey, we follow this lady on Twitter," and it was Chelsea. I know her as Chelsea Stardust. I don't know if that's her real name, but the lady who directed Satanic Panic was there. So it's like kind of cool, like the community aspect of it.
Totally.
And if you really want to know something crazy, I was looking at our download count versus our rating and subscribe count, and a lot of you guys listening have not reviewed the episode. So if you really want to support Lifeforce, do it via comment on iTunes.
Wow, that's hijacking. Let me take a run of this. Every week I do an episode and our rating and reviews stay the same. I get a little drier.
No, because no, those effects were cool. People will want to see that. People will, because then I will delete my review
Just to watch
just
me blow up.
to see like a cool zombie,
Right, never
and then
mind.
add it back. Hold on, let's take,
You're
okay,
right.
hold on, let's take another run at this. Let's
You're
say,
right,
okay,
you're
we've
right.
owed
Never
two.
mind. That's not gonna work.
You'd be our best friends for life.
Yeah, sure.
Lifeforce. Hey,
Hey.
there we go. There we go.
Add to our Lifeforce with a good review. We
Add-
appreciate it.
That's what it is. Add to our Lifeforce with a great review. We appreciate it. Until next time, stay scary. Watch a bunch of horror movies. Talk to you later. Bye, guys.